Hello, everyone. This is Nicholas Ugero, and today I have the pleasure and honor of having Gavin Nascimento on my channel today. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, brother.
Yeah, not a problem. I'm so glad that you've, what has it been, over a year that we've been talking about doing this on and
It's
off?
been a long
So,
time. Yeah, it's
yeah.
been a
So
long
I
time.
definitely appreciate that you finally decided to come. We were able to make it all work out with our time zone differences. So it's awesome, and I really
Yeah, and
appreciate it.
likewise, brother. Cool, man.
Yeah. So if for people that aren't aware of who you are or anything that you're doing or what you're about, if you want to just give a brief introduction of yourself and then how you became also aware of the problems in the world.
So it's a lot to unpack, but initially, I was a problem child growing up, and I don't have any paper credentials, but through just crazy experiences in life and a lot of self-education, I've managed to gain some unique insights that have been able to help people. So throughout my life, I've been that dude that people come and talk to, and then I'll give you some advice and help you work out your problems or whatever it may be. And through my own journey in life, I mean, it's a whole another story for another day. But to make a long story short, I got to a position where, through my own personal struggles, I actually became an alcoholic. I had a drinking problem since I was actually 12 years old, a dependency issue. And then I had terrible anxiety, and it was just crippling. And I got to a position where I said, okay, either I'm going to take my life because of the pain and suffering. That's why most people take their lives. They're actually just trying to do what you're trying to do, which is be happy and alleviate their suffering to the best of their capability. Or I'm gonna have to do something else, and I don't know what it's gonna be. So I considered doing the medication route, but I realized this is no different than self-medicating with alcohol. All right, so one day if I don't have my pills, then what? I'm gonna just freak out, and I just knew there wasn't a solution. So I just decided to start researching like a crazy person, and then I learned that the reason why I wanted to obviously commit suicide was my ignorance, because knowledge and awareness are synonymous with opportunity. And then when I started to gain knowledge, I gained access to the opportunities that could help me change my life for the better. And then I quickly realized, well, this could actually be applied to anybody in society, especially if it worked for me, it can work for anybody. So then in the beginning, I initially just wanted to motivate people. I got into also personal training, fitness, and stuff like that. And I wanted to primarily just focus on motivation. I cared nothing for politics. I literally did not know the difference between what people consider left and right. I had no idea what any of that meant. It was meaningless to me. And this was like I was already, I don't know, this was already 24, 25 years old. I had no idea what these things meant. You know what I mean? I didn't pay much attention to them. But naturally, as you begin to explore how can I empower people to the best of my ability, the wall that you quickly run into is that there's a very sophisticated system that spends unprecedented resources, incomprehensible resources to actually keep us disempowered, to keep us down. And so I began to tumble down that rabbit hole. And then I started to learn, like, what is really going on and how you simply cannot inspire or empower people without making them aware of the darkness. Once they become aware of the wolf in the sheep's skin, then they can avoid that wolf in the sheep's skin. So initially, yes, I saw that social media was a platform. I don't have any paper credentials. I can use this to reach people without them having to judge me based on my surface appearance. And then I was just using it for motivation, and it slowly began to delve deeper into politics, into psychology, and so on and so forth.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for that really personal take on it. I appreciate that very much. I'm so glad that you've been able to get out of that whole rut of like dependency on alcohol and change your life and improve your health and all that stuff. So it's really
Cool, man.
admirable, and I'm so grateful that you're that you're here with us and you're doing better than ever. So it's awesome. And yeah, me myself, I've also been dependent also on cannabis on and off since I was 13, and even still, I can still have troubles with just doing it every day. And even though it's my own homegrown stuff, it's not like anyone that I'm not getting it from the man or anything like that. But it's still, there's obviously
Yeah, I
something
can empathize
underlying
with you.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so what was the main subject matter that, like, because you were talking about motivation at first and helping people in that
Right.
way. So what was like one of the first things where you're kind of seeing, wow, that left right, I don't even know what the heck the differences are, but what was it that really kind of catapulted you into seeing more of that aspect?
Yeah. When Barack Obama actually came into office, the way people were acting so hysterical, like this dude now being in office is going to solve all my personal problems. And the first thing that came to my mind was, irrespective of who's in office, there's very little changes that actually take place for the average individual. And I was more of the position that, um, you have the most influence over your life. And people were acting like just straight up hysterical. And I just knew intuitively that this something was very unnatural about all of this. And then I started to dig into things, and one thing led to another, and Alice went tumbling down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I remember that was when I roughly the time I was watching Fox News at the time because I had no idea what I was what everything was about. So that's what my dad was watching. So that's what I was watching. But it was at the time that Barack Obama was first running for president, and yeah, just it only took a couple years for me to realize, wow, nothing's even happening. What's really changed in the past 4 years that I've been watching all this stuff? They just keep talking and talking, and nothing gets solved because the one side gets something that actually is maybe positive done, and then the other people come in and they just reverse it. So it's just literally kind of just not. It's just stagnant. It's
Yeah.
not. What
And
root problems are they really solving? So it's
exactly. And the military agenda doesn't stop. There's certain fundamental things that persist forward: the centralization of government, um, more freedoms being taken away from the people. These kind of things just continue. And then specifically with Barack Obama, when I started to dig deeper, so he was a great speaker. Nobody can deny that. Even the people who virulently dislike him, he's a great speaker, very powerful. And the things you were saying, they sounded fantastic. But I also grew up, so I never took much interest in politics. But I'm from South Africa. A lot of people that come from so-called third world countries, our attitude is all politicians are corrupt. It's all bullshit, right? So in that way, I had a leg up on most people, even though I didn't take an interest in politics. So when I heard him saying all of these things, and everybody's like, "Oh, he's gonna label GMOs. He's gonna close Guantanamo Bay. He's gonna get rid of all the lobbyists out of his White House, like he said, and all of these things. None of which he did. But at the time, everybody was blindly believing it. So I thought this is something's weird here. So of course, a very old uh, adage that is true is just follow the money. So I began to investigate, like, who financed this dude. What I find? I find George Soros. I find the exact same banks that tanked the economy. Um, you know, in what was it, 2008, and that's another thing. That's when I got heavily involved in everything with the whole Occupy movement. There was the first protest that I went to in Tampa, and I began to research, and I saw that this dude, he's saying that he's going to get rid of these lobbyists in his White House, and he's going to go after these bankers, but he's being financed by these dudes. And then when you start to see something that alarming, and you just dig deeper and deeper, you start to see the whole system is that's just an echo chamber of the entire system. And he's also just another small player in a much bigger game.
yeah, most certainly, and yeah, and that's merely a symptom. Those people that come into those positions, like we kind of talked about off air, it's merely kind of a symptom. And what if we have these financiers and these secret societies like the Club of Rome, Skull and Bones, Bilderberg,
Right.
Council on Foreign Relations, World Economic Forum, and we see that these none of these people are elected, and then we see that they have influence over the narrative or what direction that multiple countries are going into at the same time globally, then we can kind of maybe have the idea that maybe these people that we are able to vote for aren't really the ones that are pulling the levers and pulling the strings. And that's the realization that people still in 2022 just don't see that. They see that it is really, they
Right.
try to simplify it and think it's just this. We just have to do this, get the right person in there, and then things will
Right.
change. And I used to have that mindset too. And it's, you make different decisions based on what you know. And like you were saying with knowledge, how it's so Like, how am I supposed to motivate people and empower people if they don't also have maybe this kind of knowledge to make different decisions in their life as well?
Right.
Not just like personal, emotional, but just financial or whatever they decide to do or what they
Yeah.
pay attention towards. So with content creation, you started with the motivation and all that stuff. Um, what are some of your what's some of your content that you're most proud of in your course of going from motivation to talking about like politics to also the things behind the
Right.
scenes?
All right. So in relation to current event, I'm actually working on something massive. It's called MK Ultra 2.0, Beyond the COVID Smoke and Mirrors. So that will probably, uh, I suppose I'm always rooted in what's going on at the moment. So in terms of what's happening right now, it's meticulously documented and it goes into information that nobody's looking into really, and the people that I know that are looking into it, they looking more at still the kind of the surface area. So that's important to understand that everything that's going on right now is very calculated in terms of the massive mind control experiment. It's been termed mass formation psychosis. How it's very calculated, and what's going on today is analogous to MK Ultra from the past. The blueprint is just it's so similar and so much the same that it's eerie. Aside from that, the existing content, I would say the 5-hour presentation I put together that I uploaded back in August of 2020 about current events, the so-called pandemic, in which I went through everything in just assiduous detail. Everything, the studies, who's the conflicts of interest, the people advising the governments, just on so many different levels. People haven't checked it out. I highly recommend checking it out because a lot of stuff that's going on now, you would not be surprised if you had seen the presentation because it's all predictable. It's very much predictable. Aside from that, I've written quite a bit of stuff. I've put together quite a bit of content. A good presentation I gave also in 2017 that reflected on how they are just different, or the blueprint, sorry, that's going on right now, where they use philanthropic organizations, they use the health front, they produce or they present themselves as scientific in their assessments. It's nothing new. This has all been done before. MK Ultra was in fact facilitated by a so-called nonprofit foundation. So in 2017, I gave one about that as well. But something I'm also very focused on is solutions. I don't like to just slap people with the truth, which a lot of people do, and they think that they are being productive. But the reality is, when you give somebody a really harsh truth, it can be just as dangerous as fear mongering. Because if you belittle them, if you degrade them, if you slap them, so to speak, it can actually give them a horrible association in their mind. It can affect their associative memory, and then they don't want anything to do with that because they think the truth community are a bunch of patronizing assholes. And a lot of people within the so-called truth community act that way. When really we have a responsibility to be patient, to realize that we were, even if it wasn't when we were teenagers, maybe we weren't as bad as some of these people, they are lost. And the only way they're going to be found is if we are patient and we instruct them in a gentle and patient way. So also in that 2017 presentation, I actually spoke a bit about natural law, objective morality, how the overwhelming majority of people are indeed very good people. Okay, most of us share the exact same principles. We just have different perceptions. And that is of the greatest importance to recognize, because what matters the most is that we share the same principles: humanity, integrity, compassion. Having different perceptions is inevitable. But that element that has totally different principles to us, where they want to cause harm, where they want to cause destruction, they are weaponizing our perceptions against one another. And until we can align our principles and focus on that predominantly as being the main focal point, we're always going to be manipulated by these characters. And anyways, yeah, there's other stuff like Operation Gladio. I took a lot of interest in that in the past. Operation Gladio and the so-called War on Terror. Recently did a very cogent, illuminating video on September 11th, although I think most people know what's up with that by now. And yeah, just over the years, man, just different stuff. Also, I wrote a very meticulous blog several years ago on all the media outlets that are manipulating people: Fox News, CNN, BBC, Russia Today, all of them. It's all bullshit. Don't get me wrong; they're very good at exposing the so-called other side, and they are useful in that regard. But they're never going to expose their own operations. So we have to just keep that in mind. And then also another blog I wrote was called "Scientific Bullshit: How Science is Used to Control People," which clearly warn people about the shit that's going on today. But yeah, there's a couple of things.
Awesome. Yeah. If there's any way that you could possibly link that to me, some of those things that you're thinking of, if it's
Yeah,
really easy to grab those, I can easily put them in the description for people.
I'll do that. I didn't mean to
Yeah.
get that to you. Sorry, brother. I forgot, man. But
No,
I'll get it to you.
no, not a problem at all. It's fine. It's just, I mean, the fact that you're even able to list off all those things that you have done already in the past, it's great. And it's some people haven't even started maybe even writing a simple blog. So it's very inspiring to hear that, and just coming
And
from your
everybody
upbringing
out
to
there,
now. And
thanks, cousin. Everybody out there that's thinking about it, just do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have a motto that before you stand up and speak out, you need to sit down and self-educate. And I abide by that. That's absolutely imperative. However, the process of self-education and so-called enlightenment, which is an illusion because it's never ending, that process is ongoing, right? You can never attain the highest level. But at some point, you have to be able to discern and say, okay, I've gained a fair amount of knowledge about this. Now I should do something. I should do something with this. I should share this with people. And then you make an executive decision to do so. So don't let your fear, and you need to have an awareness of self. So if you grew up with a very critical family or whatever the structure may be, and you have a little bit of insecurity where now you are, and I know myself. That's why I'm speaking. I understand how this works. That you have a high standard for certain, like perfection. Perfection is an illusion, man. Just do the best you can and think objectively, because if you don't provide your input, some other motherfucker who probably doesn't know what he's talking about and is probably hateful and whatever and divisive, he or she are going to put their narrative forward, and it's just going to cause division.
yeah. There was I forgot where the quote came from, but it basically says, like, to know and not to act is not to know. So
Right.
if you have the information and you're at least confident enough to be able to articulate it in a pretty good manner, and if someone has a question, you're still able to kind of do some responses and kind of detail it more for somebody, and you choose to just sit on that, and whether it's out of maybe just your own personal selfishness, like I don't want to get a spotlight on me, or if it's just for a different reason, being cowardly or just being scared or nervous, then we might as well, like, why even learn it? Why even learn about it? Why even get passionate about it if we're not even going to act? So we're going to have our thoughts and our emotions in line. Like, this is bad. I know this is bad. I've learned enough about it to know it's bad, but then not to act on it, which is the final piece of the puzzle, is right action. And so, yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. And underlying everything, people's principles are basically the same. Like I'm totally wanting to get into the whole natural law, objective morality thing with you, because for me, that is the thing that will universally bring people together and drop a lot of those dividing lines, because it's so simple. It's almost fun.
It's
It's
very
comical.
simple.
It's almost comical. Just listing off a few of the things that are bad. I can't imagine anybody thinking that any of those are rights at any point in time. But then when you put it into a different perspective, like, oh, government, then their mindset completely changes on the things that they already agree with. So they're kind of just, it's not lining up, but they think that this is all that we can do. This is the best we can do. This system is all we got. And
It's mind control, man. Mind
yeah,
control, people tend to think it's like some crazy shit you see on TV, but it's just about controlling people's perceptions. And that's how we got you. This is thousands of years of different levels of perception control. But fortunately, the internet is actually putting us in a position where we can finally break that control. And a lot of what's going on today is exactly that. That's why we're even having this conversation.
yeah, and it's just hopefully their censorship kind of gets stifled, or people become more aware of it and really become outspoken about it before it really is a little too late for that. Just in terms of, like, shutting down. Like, I've gotten 2 videos on my channel completely removed, and unfortunately I didn't have the good the good what's it called? The upgraded kind of StreamYard account to where it saves it and I can download it. So like some of those things
Oh
I just
shit, so all your
lost.
stuff is gone. Yeah, same thing happened to me in the past, man. Yeah, people have to be very careful with digital, with the whole digital age, because at the same time, the way we're tabulating our information, the way we're preserving it, we often scoff in the past, oh, they put it on tablets, they put it in concrete or whatever they did. But in terms of preservation, that is infinitely more efficient than what we have now. This can be wiped out like that.
Yeah, most certainly. Yeah, and that's yeah, people definitely have to be able to take it like when we're taking in information, if we see an article that we like, maybe we should download it or screenshot it or whatever else, put it on a hard drive.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, so that's definitely a good, very good point to make. In terms of your website, if you want to kind of give a brief description or any sort of description on how you came about creating it, how long
All
into
right.
you becoming a content creator did you find the need to make the website? And just like,
Yeah.
yeah, just like maintenance or whatever else you need to do if you want to change the UI. Is there any
All
sort of
right.
process in that?
It took me a long time to actually get there because I was tech challenged, to say the least. I'm somebody that street smart kid, never really involved in technology, uh, internet, and so on and so forth. So it was a hurdle. It took me a while because I had to learn this stuff from scratch. Right, I didn't know how to do any of it, and of course, as time went on, it also became far easier. Today, it's extremely easy to actually administrate functional websites, put in the different apps. It's been simplified so much because of people's innovation. When I initially started, it wasn't so easy. So it took me a while. But the website was just inspired the concept, a new kind of human.com, is that before a new kind of world can be created, a new kind of human must emerge. And for me, what that new human represents is somebody that's informed and somebody that's empowered. And when I say empowered, I mean that they can defend themselves physically, mentally, and spiritually. Because ultimately, what we have in this world is a very small group, a small number of a predator class. And this predator class have a monopoly on violence. They have a monopoly on military. They have a monopoly on information control. But if we can even out the playing field, going back to people's shared principles being very similar, if we can even that playing field, I have no doubt, due to the upstanding principle of the majority of society, that it will be beneficial for everybody. So that's the concept behind a new kind of human. And then just on the blog itself, it's very solution oriented. I can see, for example, now you're just scrolling through it. There's one that focuses on helping people to overcome depression. And speaking of such, I actually did write a blog several years ago as well on my personal journey, and it goes into a great amount of detail on how to free your mind, on how to defend yourself, because we constantly being targeted. The mind is being incessantly and obsessively targeted by just multiple levels of manipulation, many of which are imperceptible to those who are not consciously and fully focused on what's going on. So there's some good stuff there that's not just focused on, oh, the world is fucking just falling apart and and I go to sleep at night and think about the future of your children. It's about actually giving people solutions. What can we do to solve the problem we find ourselves in?
Or for people that are not understanding, or like for even for me, because I'm still not sure about the whole entire process. So for WordPress in particular, so you just create an account and then they kind of have like a template that you can use and then you can kind of just drag and drop.
Yes. Yeah. So look, they have it's pre-made templates. You can find a whole bunch of them for free. You can pay for ones that aren't very costly, but there's really good ones that are absolutely free. And nothing, unfortunately, is going to substitute putting in some work. All right, you have to put in a bit of legwork, and people don't realize through the internet you have access to pretty much the highest levels of education that you can possibly conceive of. You just need to know where to look. When it comes to something simple like creating a website, you can just go to YouTube. Sure, YouTube is full of shit in many ways, but you're still going to find information. It can be other random places where people explain to you, how do you do this? So if you run into a problem, you literally say, right, okay, how do I, whatever, get this to load if it's not loading? And then somebody will have made a video out of that. And then they've simplified it for you, and you just go ahead and you reproduce what they've done. There's going to be some headaches, and it's going to be a bit annoying here and there. And you want to try to simplify things, all right? People just want the information. You don't have to, in the beginning, I was like, it needs to be elaborate and it needs to be like, look this way. And, people more than anything, they actually just want good information delivered in a powerful way. Some people want bullshit, and let them be, but you have to maintain your integrity and why you are doing this. Don't ever lose sight of that. And then just try to keep it simple.
Awesome. All great advice. I really appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Cool, man.
Yeah, it's simple. Like, I got a problem. Oh yeah, I am having this issue. What do I do?
That's it, cousin. I'm telling you, man. That's it. Yeah, I still do that shit all the time.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, with me with video editing at times, I don't know how to do a specific action, so then I just look it up, and just a couple minutes, I can put them on twice the speed, so they talk really fast, but at least I get the gist of what they're saying. So it's not too much time to be able to do stuff like that. So that's awesome. And yeah, it's great that you have your own website too, because as you know, censorship is real, and you've gotten your own YouTube channel scrubbed completely. And you had how many subscribers do you think you had at the time?
I can't even remember that. That was like way before the Facebook censorship purge or anything. That was, I think, in 2016 or 2017. I don't know. It wasn't massive. It was like 16,000. It wasn't massive, but it was a good amount.
Yeah. I'm only at 1/16 of that. So, and I get some pretty good views at times. So yeah, 16,000 is nothing to scoff at all.
Yeah, no, but look, just consistency, my brother. I can tell you as well, at one point I had a page that had over 2 million followers, right? And when people hear, they're like, oh shit, man, 2 million followers. I can tell you right now, if you have 1,000 followers that are quality followers, it's infinitely better than having 2 million followers. Trust me. You want people that are like ride or die. They're serious about wanting to change the world, and they are willing to go along with you on this journey. If you can find that, then you've got a squad. That's what you need. You need people to have your back, because no one person can do this alone. It's not possible. You need to have a strong support system.
Most certainly, yeah. Resilience in numbers, and just having each other's backs. And that's the thing, like you were saying, ride or die. It's a lot of people may just be there for the time because it's convenient. And then if things get harder, maybe they will just kind of ghost you and they won't be there for you. So yeah, it's really trying to find that sort of tribe, not just online, but also find ways to interact with people locally. And that's why me going to this rally soon after we get off on this interview, it's great to be able to network with people, communicate with people. Yeah, they may not share the same underlying ideas of what the problem really is and stuff like that, but that's where the whole, like you're saying, communication, patience, and being tactful and all that stuff, it really comes into play. And it's even if they may not be focusing on the root issue, there's still open dialogue, and there's people that are local in my area, so it's more positives than negatives, most definitely. So it's
human interaction, man. We all need it.
Yeah,
we need human interaction, and we're losing the concept of that because they want us to lose the concept of that.
Yeah, most certainly. And just being cowardly and just being kind of beaten down into submission. And I'm curious as to what role food and water and all these kind of basic necessities are going to play in the coming years, and how that's
they're already playing a big role.
Yeah, exactly. And I hopefully it dwindles down, but I don't really see that happening, unfortunately. So this one of the viewers, Enzo, thank you once again for coming on here, Enzo. I appreciate it. Where do you stand on the moon landing, 9/11 inside job, flat Earth, and then breast implants?
It's an interesting.
Squeeze that one in there.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So for me, anybody that's followed my research in relation to 9/11, it's incontrovertible that it was an inside job. All right, I made a video on this that I just posted this recent September 11th. That was about 13 minutes long, and I deliberately made it as short as possible, but it goes into everything, right? Or the most important details, I should say, which is that there are more than 3,000 architects, engineers, scientists, and prestigious scientists and professionals that have come forward and they've said, look, it is literally impossible. In fact, they did a study very recently at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. It was a 4-year study, peer-reviewed, so a longer study than the bullshit that the government claims and alleges that they did through NIST. And they found that it's literally impossible. The claim that Building 7, which was the third tower that fell, even though nothing hit it, the claim that it collapsed due to office fires is literally physically impossible. And they concluded that the only thing that what actually happened was all the columns simultaneously buckled and collapsed. And the only way that can happen is if there is controlled demolition. Okay. In addition to that, several leading forensic experts, so through scientific analysis, engineers, metallurgical engineers, they studied the dust samples at World Trade Center 7, which most of it, by the way, was completely dusted up, it was eliminated, it was discarded, which is a crime. You can't do that. According to FEMA's guidelines, you cannot do that. You have got to test the dust samples, especially when there is eyewitnesses talking about explosives, which we'll get to in just a minute. But what they found was high explosive thermitic materials. Okay, and the specific thermitic materials they found are of military grade use. They aren't something just out in the open market. Not anybody can just get a hold of these things. It is extremely difficult to manufacture and put together. It would also help if I could get people to ask me these questions in real time, because I know as I'm speaking, people say, but what about this? What about that? And I've got a rebuttal for all of that, pretty much, including, how could they have smuggled it in? The fact of the matter is, with the World Trade Centers, they were undergoing at that time, the greatest modernization in elevator history through Ace Elevator Company, which went defunct not long after the whole entire debacle. Other things, there was a bunch of, first of all, first responders that also said that it was an inside job. An explosion came long before anything with the plane, most notably William Rodriguez, this guy was a hero. Right, he met George Bush, he met Hillary Clinton. You can still find the photos of him meeting them to this day. And they were talking about having him be the governor. He's credited with saving about 100 people's lives. He's famously known as the last man out the towers. And because he had what's known as the master key. And the master key they used to get into all the doors, he helped all the firemen go. He claimed, and his story has consistently been the same, that before any plane hit, there was an explosion that went down below. And it blew them upwards. And he was with a whole bunch of people, right? And he offered these people, because he gave his testimony to the 9/11 Commission behind closed doors. Later on, he would remark on how he thought it was strange they were doing it behind closed doors because everybody else was in closed doors. And he said, all of these people were with me. They can all corroborate what I'm saying. Key eyewitness testimony. And what did the 9/11 Commission do? They omitted his whole entire report. In addition to that, I can go on forever about this stuff, but just watch the video, guys. Okay, I can go on forever about that. In terms of what was the other stuff? The moon landing, the breast implants, and what was the other thing? The moon landing, flat Earth. Okay, all right. So with the whole moon landing thing and flat Earth, which people have come to me with the whole flat Earth thing before, I have looked very little into this, and I'm going to tell you why. When it comes to something like I just mentioned, 9/11, where the evidence it's overwhelming, it's irrefutable, it's incontrovertible. There are more than 3,000 professionals, architects, engineers, scientists, and so on and so forth that have come forward and said and presented mountainous evidence disproving the official story. And they've actually asked NIST for comment, and NIST has not gotten back to them, which is the government agency, to correct their report. I don't know, last time I checked, they hadn't gone back to them. And as a result, there are members of this group and about a dozen family members of victims that were killed, including Bobby McIlvaine, who are now suing the government. But when that happens, and then also with something like this in current events, where there are literally tens of thousands of doctors and scientists saying that this is bullshit, that we don't all have to get vaccinated, and yet people still can't see that. A lot of people still can't accept that. And the evidence is incontrovertible. Why would I go and explore something like fucking flat Earth or the moon landing, right? I'm not trying to discourage other people from doing it, because if you feel convicted, you should do it. But for me, it's counterproductive. I'm trying to focus on things that there's an abundance of verifiable evidence. How, let's say theoretically speaking, I mean, how am I going to find out if the Earth is flat? I know that there's some really important, interesting, intriguing information out there, but each and every one of us can only dedicate our mental resources and energy into so many things. And for me, that's more of a distraction than the more palpable things that I can prove. Now, again, I'm not trying to dismiss people that look into that stuff. If you feel convicted, if you feel passionate, then go ahead and pursue it. But for everybody else that feels, pulled in all of these directions, that is in itself oftentimes a tactic to keep you disarmed, to ensure that you are debilitated. So that's my position there. And then the whole breast implant things, if that was a serious question, is personally, I love women. I'm a big fan of women. And I don't think that any woman needs to have breast implants, but that's just my position. Ultimately, I respect people's right to freedom of choice. I think women are amazing, beautiful, special beings, man. And I love their minds and I love their feminine nature. Even the women that are a bit more masculine, that's cool with me too, little tomboyish or whatever. I think they should be obviously let live, man. So if women want to do that, it's no big deal, man. In fact, I have obviously, and I think everybody does, we've got a lot of friends and so on and so forth that have done that. And if it makes you feel empowered, if it makes you feel good, then I'm an advocate of that. But more often than not, and I'm just throwing this out there, if you feel maybe a little bit insecure, if you feel like you aren't good enough or something, the problem there is it's something it's deeper. It's a deeper underlying issue, right? Because beauty comes in all shapes and sizes, regardless of what the bullshit beauty industry, the so-called beauty industry, is saying. Today it's about being thick. In the past it's about being skinny. What's going to be tomorrow? But they're moving the goalposts the whole time. Beauty comes in all shapes, sizes, and skin colors. And if we can appreciate that and also appreciate women's minds more, and I'm not just saying it's with women, it's with dudes too, right? It goes both ways. It's a two-way street. But if we can start to focus rather than allowing the system to focus and hone in on what it wants us to be obsessed with, but if we can focus on what really matters, again, human principles, and don't get me wrong, looks are a part of it. I mean, me too, right? But just, long story short, sorry, I'm going on a bit of a tangent, yeah. Live and let live, but ultimately happiness and self-confidence comes from within.
Amen to that. Yes, most certainly. And it's basically a poison in the aspect of like the insecurities and putting your kind of your value of yourself in that perspective. It's basically like a poisoned worldview. It's what our values are, and just seeing like, oh, this is the value. I need to have this much cash, fiat currency in my bank account, or I need to have this kind of car. I need to be living on my own because I am this age, or this and this. But there's so many different things to that. But yeah, like what's in your mind? How do you feel? Like what are your convictions? What do you do? Are you a good person? Do you support evil institutions, or do you support more freedom, or whatever it is? That's more important to me. As much as yes, the looks is definitely. I'm sure I've been kind of conditioned through the porn that I was watching for decades and all this other garbage.
This is what's
this is beauty. This is what it is. All this unrealistic garbage. So, who even knows how much of that is still really ingrained in my head in terms of my interests and what is attractive for me. So, there's definitely a lot more to it. I wanted to ask you about the COVID narrative, but I already know that you have a 5-hour video about it. So that's definitely your take on the COVID narrative. If you just want to give a quick,
believe it or not, that 5-hour exposition that I put together, that in itself was just a first part. That was like it wasn't all the way deep in. This is a complex thing that's taking place. And initially when I did that, the overwhelming majority of people were very quiet. So I realized I have to, even within the alternative media, people were deafeningly silent. And I understand why, but I realized like I had to address the scientific stuff. It had to come from a really massive, wide sphere of analysis and verifiable analysis. I mean, also I went through the history of the Spanish flu, because they make these in the beginning. I don't know if you recall, but they made these very specious associations between the Spanish flu and COVID-19. That's called classical conditioning, where they manipulate your mind. They brainwash you through associative memory by associating something over and over and over. So in the past, they did it with Iraq and weapons of mass destruction, or Al Qaeda, and now they're doing it. Let's say somebody that speaks out against the whole COVID thing. Oh, they right wing, they QAnon, they Donald Trump, or they try to create a tribal thing to dismiss people. And then also they did it with the whole Spanish flu thing early on, where they, obviously this was a huge, massive pandemic. 150 million people died. So I decided to dig deeply into that. And I find it's completely taken out of context. The history behind that is also a whole load of bullshit that we've been told. So anyways, I just went through so many different things in that presentation, but it was still just the first part, right? There's still a whole nother dimension of the intelligence communities with DARPA, with the Rockefeller Foundation, and so on and so forth.
Yes, most definitely. And yeah, just as like an appetizer, that's a perfect description of what was kind of in that video. And so for people that are obviously interested, I'm going to be posting that right now into the comment section. So if you guys want to check it out, that is the 5-hour expose. And then probably the best way to actually watch it would probably be on your website, since it's not on a platform itself. Or is it linked? Is it hyperlinked on your website? Or is it just a link to get to the...
I've actually got it on BitChute, so people can probably
perfect.
check it out on BitChute. Yeah, you can go check it out on BitChute.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna find that. Yeah. I'll put that too,
because it also goes into history. You know what I mean? I always explore history, because history is like the foundation from which you can look forward. Because once something has been done and there's patterns in history, once it gets done over and over, you can say, okay, well, they do this shit all the time, and then it becomes a lot easier for people to accept. At the moment, a lot of people reject things without having any understanding of history. But when the understanding of history is there and they reject it, then you just sound like a fool. You can't, because it's been done before.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for pointing that out, because it's definitely something that people really need to take into account, for sure.
Yeah, history, man.
Yeah, most certainly. And I know that they make it so dry and boring in school, and most kids are just
but it's fucking fascinating, man.
What relevance does this have to anything in my life? But then they just see it in a different perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, I got kicked out of school. I got kicked out of school. I failed history. I failed a bunch of subjects because I just didn't give a shit. But that's what they want. They want you to not take any interest, when in reality, history is just fucking fascinating. Like real history, it's incredible.
Yeah, that's how I was when I got out of high school. I was like, let me just smoke some weed. Let me play some games. Literally, I don't want to learn anything. This is all
I've had enough of this shit. I'm burnt out. Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't until I started learning about... I started watching the Zeitgeist documentaries, and then my brother showed me...
That's how it started for me too.
And then my brother showed me Hidden Secrets of Money from Mike Maloney, and
oh, that dude, yeah, way back in the day, man. I remember that dude too, yeah.
And then just getting into gardening, and then realizing the power of that. So that's kind of where, oh wow, this knowledge really is really empowering, because this whole, like, I've been gardening for 5 years now, so it's definitely change your perspective once you find the information that really can empower you and really
for sure
applicable in your own life, not just algebra. So
right.
Yeah. So for we want to keep it within an hour, maybe a little bit longer than that. So I just wanted to start tackling some potential solutions or just empowerment. So for you, what are if you want to give any sort of tips or anything like that, just ways on being healthy, if there's any natural products that you personally take to help your just your body out, because I just interviewed someone about shilajit, which is the black resin that comes from the mountaintops, and I've been taking that. Like, I feel like my hair is getting a little bit thicker and my brain's functioning a little bit better and stuff like that. Magnesium is supposed to be really good. I know most of us are deficient in magnesium. Yeah. So, like, if you just want to give some of your insight on that, or anything that's personally helped in your life.
So, I mean, for the people that have been following me for a long time, I've actually been hit with some inexplicable health issues that began a few months before the so-called pandemic, where there's some weird shit going on with my bile ducts, and the medical authorities, I've gone to see all kinds of specialists, and they don't know what it is. Now, I have my theories of what it could be, because when you go through every logical possibility, you have to start exploring the more illogical, or what you perceive as being illogical possibilities. But as a result, it's also made me turn a lot more inwardly to what really constitutes health, because only until you explore really bad health issues, and I lost like 45 pounds. Okay, I thought I was gonna die. It's no bullshit. And it was always somebody who was extremely healthy. Okay, very healthy, never did any weird shit, didn't even drink coffee, didn't take energy drinks, none of that stuff, just straight up natural, and did my thing. And then you explore, I mean, you experience something like that. It's tough, man. And unless somebody's been through that kind of thing, they can't really appreciate what that feels like when you're living in your own body and you're actually scared of being in your own body. It's fucking traumatizing, man. It's crazy. But it did force me to explore many other things. And sure, diet plays a role, right? But I think a lot of people have a rudimentary understanding and awareness of what's good and what's bad. Try to avoid processed foods. There's always a genetic component as well. You know, just trying to figure out what was going on with myself. I took a gene test. I found out that I'm lactose intolerant, which probably explains why initially when I went vegan, I had really favorable results because I was lactose intolerant. But my cousin, she apparently has to eat animals, right? Which, I mean, that's pretty shocking, but it's something she found in her genetic test. So, I mean, I'm going to just put that on a shelf. I don't want to comment on that whole debate too much because I don't know precisely. And there's a lot we don't know about diet, including all those gurus that you fucking see. A lot of them don't know what the fuck they're talking about because in real time, we're trying to learn about health and so on and so forth. The basics, though, is get some fresh air, do a little bit of exercise, make time for something that's lighthearted, do something that's going to quiet your mind, spend time in nature. These very simple things, if you do them religiously on a day-to-day basis, they make a huge difference. If you can meditate, and I know meditation seems like this esoteric kind of concept, but if you could just find a way to keep your mind quiet, and it doesn't have to even be quiet, but go somewhere where it's quiet, where you don't have all these things pulling you in a different direction, where you don't have your phone going off every 5 seconds, where you allow yourself to just be and listen to some good music, dance, you know what I mean? Just do these basic things and make simple, good, healthy choices. Drink some good water, right? Get clean. Try to farm from the local farmer. I mean, try to get food from the local farmer. So just by doing these very basic things, it makes a huge difference. Breathing exercises are also really good. Cold and hot showers between the two, also really good. But if you could just keep it basic and make sure that you are moving, a lot of us lead sedentary lifestyles, especially now with all of this crazy shit going on. And it cripples us, man. And then the other big thing, especially in light of current events, is try to find a way to attenuate, to alleviate the stress that is in your life. Stress is a part of life. It's impossible to eliminate. Don't make that your goal because it's ridiculous. You're not going to eliminate stress, but learn how to manage it. Go work out, right? Go for a jog. Whatever it may be, you need to develop a ritual. You need to have me time, and you need to do it every day, uncompromisingly. Now, some people, I know for me, I'm working very hard right now because financially it's been tough. And then you'll say, oh, but I don't have time. Ironically, you think you don't have time because your brain is operating like sludge. But when you start to make the time and your brain starts to speed up more efficiently and work better, then you'll be more productive, even with less time. So just the basics, man. Just the simple things. Get back to doing the simple things. Spend time in nature, eat decent foods, get some clean air, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, all fantastic. I appreciate you going into depth about that because there's so many of those that are extremely good points. All of them are really, really good points. And especially for each individual, different things will be more will resonate more with them. So it's, yeah, for me, the dancing, I remember like just from July to December of last year, I was a fucking wreck. I was smoking weed all the time to self-medicate. I got cheated on. So like my self-esteem was in the gutter. I was suicidal at times, whatever else, playing video games, just keeping myself distracted. I always had to have something going on. Otherwise I couldn't sit still anymore, like in quiet. So, and then, yeah, just one day I said, okay, I'm just going to start jamming to some music in my bathroom, just looking at myself, just dancing, whatever else. And I felt so damn good after doing that. And I really haven't done it since then, but I know for a fact it's going to help me. And like you were saying, like, you may not think you have the time or you have the energy, but if you do it every single day, it will get that shift in your brain to where, yeah, this is totally doable. It's just building habits, positive ones. And So for me, the dancing is a great benefit, and it's not difficult. You know,
Right.
if my bathroom's right here, I can just literally just go in there, put some headphones on, just whatever,
Right.
chillax. You know, so yeah,
Yeah.
it's so many of those are good points, and yeah, so many people are just escaping themselves away in their homes from fear and stress, and yeah, fear is such a killer in that aspect, and then that leads to all the things that are kind of going on in the world. Um, so thank you once again for doing that explanation. I really appreciate it. So I want to kind of delve into the whole natural law, objective morality, because you did mention how you made a video about it. If you want
It
to,
was a long presentation, but
okay,
towards the end, because this is something that when I deal with an issue, it's multifaceted. So I began the presentation about how the influences in the society we live in is very destructive. It's very debilitating and it pollutes us, right? It's like if you were born in the mud, you're going to get dirty. That's what the society represents. But once we remove all of that, all of the conditioning, all of the external factors, and we deal solely with the human being, that's when we get into objective morality and what's authentic human nature.
yes, yeah, okay. So yeah, so in terms of that, what would so for objective morality, that's right and wrong or not subjective. It is something that we can come to an understanding of, that this is wrong. Doesn't matter what time it is, what place it is, you know, what the mindset is, what the country is. Doesn't matter what their laws say, but it's wrong across the board, no matter where you are.
All
So in
right.
terms of that, what for you, what would be a wrongdoing, or what would be a right? Either what would be the definition of a right?
Right. Right. So I'm somebody that I like to try to present things not simply in a manner that appeals to people's logic or their sensibilities, although that is important. But I try to come and provide as much verification as I possibly can, right? Historically, scientifically, and so on and so forth, and then pragmatically in terms of first person experience. First and foremost, we have what's known as the golden rule. So the golden rule stretches back thousands and thousands of years, transcending cultures, countries, peoples, religions, and it's simply the adage of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's a very very simple principle shared by the ancient Egyptians, ancient Sumerians, everywhere in India, in modern times. People know that obviously, if you don't want something done to yourself, you don't do it to another person. It's really not rocket science. So being violent towards another person and it's not an act of self-defense, that's an obvious wrong. Violating another person's freedom when they are not imposing on your freedom, that's an obvious wrong. And these are things that are not difficult, paradoxical questions um, as they are being presented today, which is in the age of social science, which began roughly, didn't begin, but it really started to get revolutionized 100 years ago by predominantly the Rockefeller Foundation, which is why we find ourselves largely in this climate of madness. It's not a very difficult question. Morality, it's not a subjective thing. And then to further go beyond the the golden rule, which everybody can check this out. I mean, it's been around for thousands of years, and it shows a common theme. Again, cultures, people that never encountered each other, never heard of each other because we didn't have Twitter, we didn't have Facebook. People couldn't contact with one another, but they knew intuitively, regardless of where they were, that you just do unto others as you would have them do unto you. More interestingly, and this is a study that I've heard nobody talk about, even though I've been trying to talk about this for a long time. I've actually made a video about this too that just occurred to me, a shorter one, which I'll give for you to link. There was a guy by the name of Professor Paul Bloom from Yale University. He conducted studies, very meticulous studies. They are the most insightful studies I know about authentic human nature, where he conducted studies on babies as young as 3 months old. We oftentimes we hear about these experiments like the Milgram experiments or some kind of experiment where it shows that human beings are capable of doing horrible, evil things. But this is when they're already adults. That's not a good representation of authentic human nature. The studies that Paul Bloom of Yale University conducted, often just referred to as the moral life of babies. He wanted to know, like, is morality something that's inborn, or is this something that's learned through our environment, right? A lot of people have this belief, like, through my cultural heritage or my religion or my lack of religion, I'm learning right from wrong. I'm learning from the environment. What he found through a series of studies was, and these studies can be found online, where took little babies and he did this like elaborate puppet show, and the one would be a bully, and obviously a bully, and then they would choose who they want to play with, just different kinds of tests. He found that morality is indeed an inborn thing. He also noted that we have a rudimentary understanding and awareness of right and wrong. Sharing is also normal. It's also interesting because I have a baby right now. He's just over 1 year old, and I've been observing a lot of things with him. He's been sharing with me, and I've never taught him that. He's been doing it for a long time. He just comes and gives me things, in the sweetest way. So through these studies, and I highly recommend everybody look into it. I mean, it's such a profound study. You would expect it to be everywhere, but of course it's nowhere to be found. And it shows that, yes, we have a rudimentary understanding of right and wrong. We understand what morality is. We have a sense of integrity. Now, there is one downside to that human nature, however, and this is something that I focus on when I'm giving my presentations, and specifically the one in 2017, is that we have something that he terms righteous anger. And what righteous anger is, it's when we get angry with something that we perceive to be wrong, something we perceive to be evil, more specifically. So for these babies, he did these tests, and with the puppets, there would be the one bully puppet, and then afterwards he would present the puppets to the babies, and with a considerable number of them, with a notable number of these babies, not only did they not want to play with the puppet that was a bully, they actually wanted to discipline the puppet. So some of them hit the puppet. And this is something we see within ourselves, right? If, let's say, we find out there's a pedophile, say, oh, fuck, hang that piece of shit, right? Get rid of him. We need to eliminate him. The trouble, however, with this, it's imperative for fighting against actual evil in this way. As I've gone through in my presentations, the human species is actually a warrior species meant to snuff out things that are genuinely evil, like horrible levels of evil, violating children, things of that nature. But the trouble is, if we don't have knowledge, if we don't have truth, this can be weaponized against us. And this precisely is what the ruling class have used against us for thousands of years. They create an image of what is considered evil. In more modern history, it's, like what they're doing right now. It's people that are not wearing face masks. It's the people that are, they're killing people, they're selfish, and they create this image, and then you get this virulent, uncompromising response from the other segment of society. When it came to the so-called war on terror, the boogeyman was Al-Qaeda, but lo and behold, Al-Qaeda was through various channels. I did a blog on this, so just remind me and I'll go ahead and I'll link it, where Al-Qaeda and the affiliates were being financed by, and not just financed, if you go all the way back to the Mujahideen and the Soviet-Afghan war, the training, the financing, all of these things for these groups, specifically in Libya, this happened with the LIFG, the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group. They work with these terrorists, and yet now, but they use it as a boogeyman, and then they get everybody's anger all riled up, and then they can weaponize that ignorant anger in whatever direction they like. So that's the only downside. That's the only major downside, is when we don't have palpable, verifiable, accurate knowledge and truth of what is really evil, then those who are ironically evil, the ones that we are actually after, who we are trying to get a hold of, they will then weaponize that against us. In this way, they know more about our nature than we know about our own nature.
Yes, exactly. And it's not even legitimately a power differential. It's literally a knowledge differential. And they have information.
It's perception, man.
Yeah, and they have information about the human brain, and like you're talking about some of the studies. They're the ones that basically conduct some of these studies that happen, the Milgram experiments and all that stuff. So they have an understanding of the group mind, how they view people, how people normally view authority, and all those things. So they use that to their advantage, and they use our ignorance of it to our disadvantage. And like you're saying, they know that we have that kind of like instinctual, we can come to the understanding of what right and wrong are. And yeah, they weaponize it. They use it against us. They put a certain boogeyman that they maybe helped kind of shape and all these things, so it's more controlled. And
right now they're doing it with China. They're doing it with China. They've done it before in the past with China. But an interesting way to bridge that gap is, and I tell people this all the time, and they think, it's quite profound because they never considered it. what you need to do, right, is go look at what are the highest grossing movies in each country that they tell you is so evil. Go look at the highest grossing movies in these countries. And what you're going to find is the exact same prominent theme of humanitarianism, of integrity, of fighting the bad guys, of the good guy winning. In fact, you'll oftentimes find the same movies will be popular in the same country. So in China, for example, like the Marvel movies, where it's obviously the theme is good versus evil, it's just as popular over there as it is in Western countries. The problem is the elitist enterprise. And at the highest levels, they work together, boys and girls. Okay. They want to make you believe that they are fighting with one another, but they're not. In the blog I'm writing right now, I go into more detail about that. On my Patreon, I actually went into detail about the Western interests, the Western establishment in China are ubiquitous. They are incredibly powerful, and they've been in power over there since the 19th century in the Opium Wars. They work together. Okay. It's how do you create fear and division amongst the common people, right? Create conflict amongst the common people. And how do you create enterprise amongst the elitists? It's just a very sophisticated system of manipulation and control. And I assure you, they would much rather work together to maintain that control than have any one of their systems, wherever it may be, begin to fall and collapse, and then put themselves in a position where revolution can be inspired like dominoes throughout the world. This is an old game, guys. Even, you know how you were talking about elections? In ancient Rome, guys, over 2,000 years ago, they were already using a phony system that appeared to be, it was a simulation of a democratic republic where they allowed people to think that they were electing their government. Lo and behold, with the first Roman Revolution, which was spearheaded by the Gracchi brothers, lo and behold, the whole thing fell flat on its face, and it became apparent that the government was just a figurehead. And what was actually controlling the government was a so-called advisory group known as the Senate. Now, when we think of the Senate, we think of the government, but we got the word Senate from Rome. Back then, the Senate, the Roman Senate, was something analogous to the Council on Foreign Relations. It wasn't a part of the government. But then eventually the whole smokescreen fell apart. So my whole point in sharing that kind of story is if they were doing this shit over 2,000 years ago, you think they haven't thought about doing that now? Come on, guys.
Yeah, exactly. And it's you can see their knowledge of the psyche in terms of like you're saying, like you didn't know about the difference between left versus right. And if you really think about it, the right, represented by the color red, which it represents male, and so it's the father figure, the defender. You know, I'm here to protect you. Work hard, provide all this stuff, and then we got the blue color, which represents the feminine aspect, the nanny state. Let's have emotion. Let's show compassion. Let's help out our neighbors and all that stuff. So they literally have split what a human normally should be using the left brain, the male, and then the right brain, the
Some
feminine,
good insight, brother.
and coming together. So they've literally, so people might be more right brain dominant, so they kind of gear towards the Democrats, and people more left brain dominant, so they gear more towards the Republicans. And for them, it makes sense because their brain is not working on a holistic level. They're not using both sides at the same time. They're kind of one side or the other, which can lead to certain mindsets or views.
It's generations, man.
Yeah,
it's generations of tribalism, brother.
yeah. And I wanted to share this really quick just so people, I've shared this before, but just the mental schism. So if you're more left brain, so more of the masculine, rigid skepticism, scientism, atheism, solipsism, where there's no such thing as objective truth, moral relativism, where right and wrong is just based on where we're at and time and place, social Darwinism, where we need to have people, survival of the fittest, you know, they're the most fit, so they need to rule us, eugenics, obviously, authoritarianism, and then if you're more right-brained,
eugenics is the big thing behind all of this right now.
Yeah,
that's where it leads to, man.
Yeah, most certainly. And then if you're more right brain, naivete, blind belief, religious extremism, solipsism as well, unworthiness, self-loathing, order follower, willing slave. So it's more the dominator, which is the left brain, and then it's also the slave, passive kind of mindset on the right. And so, they've literally kind of just split us up. They know how this kind of dichotomy works, and they know that one of us either has a mommy issue or a daddy issue. So we kind of gravitate towards that. And
I would just like to add, it is important, though, in those initial observations, because those are observations that can be made from a very objective standpoint. A lot of people are still very embedded in the impulse and the unconscious manipulation of their own emotions, where the emotions just kind of dictate and pull and push them where they are. So it's important to try to be also approach that with people in an empathic way and listen to what they have to say. Like, why do you feel this way? Oftentimes, what I've encountered with people that, let's say, they identify with the left or they identify with the right, or even in the so-called center and everywhere in between, again, they have very similar principles. So when they talk about what's going on with the right, they're mentioning things that are definitely evil and should be opposed. And when the right is talking about the left, they're talking about things that are definitely evil and should be opposed. But the trouble is, in this whole divide and conquer narrative, that exists on both sides. And the ruling class knows that. And because we have limited focuses, limited perceptions, if you focus on the wrongdoing of that one side and you start to associate it with the whole entire tribe, you can go on forever. Sure, there's going to be all kinds of horrible individuals. It's going to make your mind think through focus that they all bad. But that's not the case, guys. You have to realize the own vulnerability, your own frailty in your own perception, the own limitations you have. Nobody's superior, myself included. We're all limited. We're all ignorant in one way or another. So it's very important when we approach this to always remember whoever you're talking to on the other side of the screen or in real life. I mean, this generally isn't a problem in real life because people know how to act right a little bit more in real life. But when you're communicating with somebody online, what you need to consider in a big way is this person probably shares the same principles as myself. They probably love animals, right? They probably are amazing with their own children, and they probably don't want to see suffering and killing, and they're probably opposed to pedophilia. In this way, you have a lot more in common with them than the elitists of your political party or your political tribe who are involved in warmongering, who is involved in bombing, who is involved in pedophile rings or whatever it may be, in exploitation. And it's so important to always frame it in that way and remind ourselves we are so much alike, but we have got to look beyond the tribal trappings of politics because that's meant to divide you. That's why it's there, guys. It's not about solutions. It's about creating problems.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it's, yeah. And it's just, it really comes from the mind. It's what information do we have within ourselves at this present moment? And then how do we internalize that? How do we come into an understanding of that? And then what actions do we take based off that knowledge and then our understanding of that information? And it's, if we don't have a good, sound foundation when it comes to information and it's not based in truth for the most part, we're going to get the results that don't help us out, that aren't real solutions, that maybe extend terror or tyranny and control instead of actually try to limit it and bring it down.
All right. And just to complement that, one other thing that I try to remind people, because it's so easy to get swept up in the tidal wave of emotions and drama and tribalism that's constantly and incessantly taking place, is you need to ask yourself, whatever it is that you truly embody or you think you embody, are you really being a representative of that? So if you want to embody integrity and humanity and kindness and so on and so forth and truth, are you really embodying that? Are you sharing that in your discussions with people? Are you treating them with respect, even when they're disrespectful to you? Are you providing factual evidence, or are you just undermining them by name calling, right? We have to say to ourselves, what am I embodying? And what am I sharing and proliferating? Because that, above all else, is what you are voting for. I don't care if you call yourself left or you call yourself right. It's about what are you embodying? That's what you're voting for. What are you speaking? That's what you're voting for. How are you treating other people, including your so-called enemies? That's what you are voting for. So always keep that in mind, guys. If we want a better world, we need to start conducting ourselves in a better way. And by doing so, then we will teach others unconsciously to do better as well, to be more patient, to present things in a more structural narrative. And at the same time, of course, we can make mistakes, but so can other people too. Somebody might act like a fool. Maybe they've got some crazy shit going on. Maybe their dad died. Maybe whatever it may be. Doesn't mean you let people walk all over you, right? Do no harm, but take no shit. But at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what am I voting for?
Yes, most certainly. Yeah. And it's finding that, that consistency within yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. The Trinity, the great, like, like the just you got in, yeah, like the values and the principles that you have, are you faltering in some aspect? And that's the whole thing with respect, self-respect. You're respecting, you're looking at yourself again.
And
To look at
having a
oneself
standard.
again.
You got
Yeah.
to have standards for yourself in the way you conduct yourself. And that doesn't mean that anybody's perfect, because nobody's perfect. The truth is the only thing that's perfect, because it's a representation of authentic reality. It is what it is, right? If the shoe fits, the shoe fits. That's it. It is what it is. We can do our best to aspire towards that. We're going to fall short. We're going to make mistakes. But if we can acknowledge that, put on our big boy pants or our big gold dress, boom, move forward, do better, create a better world.
Yeah, most definitely. And I'll just have it end on that. I totally appreciate your insight, and I definitely agree in basically all the aspects. And I'd love to be able to delve into this more, because for me, it's
Cool,
really
man.
the crux of it. It's the personal responsibility aspect. It's what are the family units? What are they aspiring towards? What are
Right.
their values? Do they go to TV, or do they go to this? And then that's what the child watches, or do they actually sit down and teach them, hey, this is right, this is wrong. If you have any questions, come to me. I'm not just going to tell you do it because I said so. I'll actually give you insight on it so you can come to an understanding on your own, and not just say, oh, I'm authority, so just do what I said and don't think about it.
Yeah,
And what are
no,
we
it's
putting
not
into
the
our
way.
child's minds? Yeah. And it's
Yeah,
garbage in, garbage out, and then garbage out, garbage back. It's
yeah,
what are we putting out into the world, and then what are we getting back? And it doesn't take any belief for that. Literally just sit down and think about it, contemplate it, and see where the world is and what it is that we're doing. What are our values? What are we supporting? What are we not? What are we against? And
yeah.
just we
Because
can
the
see.
future for the children is right now. It's headed in a fucking bad place, guys. So
Yeah,
you
most
know,
definitely.
just very quickly, there's an expression that courage is not the absence of fear; it's the recognition that there's something else more important than fear. And I know, as myself as a new father, I'm sure there's somebody out there, nephew, whoever it may be, when you think and consider and contemplate the future that is coming for them, surely that must be more important than the anxiety and the fear and so on and so forth that you personally feel. It's better to speak up than to not say anything, guys.
Yeah, most definitely. And even I'll put myself on the spotlight. I'm making videos and I'm making content. I'm going to some rallies and all that stuff. I could be doing a hell of a lot better. And I know that personally, just holding myself to a higher standard. I know that I'm not going to shame myself, but I know that
Yeah,
I
don't,
could have more
yeah,
willpower, more sustained
yeah.
drive and all that stuff. And there are times where I just come home and I'm like, I just worked and stuff. I'm kind of beat. I'm just going
Take
to
it
sit
easy,
down and
and
take
it's
it
good to
easy.
do
But
that, man.
yeah,
That's also good to do. You can't sacrifice yourself in this pursuit, because I assure you, many have. Don't sacrifice in your pursuit. Michael Rupert, uh, an undervalued activist in history, he pretty much did that, man. The guy gave so much of himself to the point that he couldn't give anymore. And because you already are an empathic individual that wants to change this world for the better, you like a sponge. You feel things on a much deeper level than everybody else. So at the same time as you're trying to help others, the first person you have to help, the first person you have to be there for is yourself, because you can't pour from an empty cup.
yeah, exactly. What good are you helping anyone else if your house isn't even in order at all and you're not doing well mentally? Yeah, that's why I wasn't really making content all of last year. I was busy and doing my own things. And then I got traumatized and I was no good to anybody. I had to kind of dig myself out of that. So
Well,
it was,
you're looking good, brother. I'm glad to see you back up on that horse, man.
yeah, thanks. I need to lose a couple more pounds, but
No, it's
besides
all
that,
good.
I'm doing all right.
One step at a time, man. Those who move mountains begin by carrying away small stones. That's all you
Yeah.
got to do. Take one stone, one day at a time.
Yeah, most certainly. And Hayes, thanks again for coming on and having a nice little back and forth with Enzo. I don't know what to make of that. Enzo, you are who you are. I have no idea who you are, but I appreciate some of the things you say, but then other things I completely disagree with. But I appreciate you being on here, though. But Hayes, thanks for also being on here. Thanks for the
Yeah,
insight,
much love,
Gavin.
man.
As always, I
Cool.
really appreciate these interviews, Nicholas. Stay strong. Thank you so much, Hayes. And you do the same. I appreciate it very much. So yeah, if you just want to give people a brief description of what you have upcoming with your blog again,
Yeah,
and then also just where people can find you, because I didn't even realize you're on BitChute. So if you want to just,
yeah. It's such a small following, man. I haven't put the same kind of effort I used to in regards to those things, because I'm trying to actually put myself in a position, and it's a very slow process, of creating some kind of self-sustainability financially so I can pursue this permanently. Because for the past over 10 years now, about 7 of those years have been just marked by a great deal of financial hardship, and there's a lot of stress involved in that. You can't be as productive. So I want to get that sorted out. And anybody who wants to get involved in this kind of stuff, I strongly recommend looking, especially if you don't come from money, right? If you come from a broke background, you need to get that shit taken care of, man, because the stress will consume you. So I've been working on that predominantly. In terms of what am I focusing on right now, like I said, I'm almost done with this blog. I'm actually just doing the sources and the citations, but it has to be, you have to make things airtight, right? If you're following somebody and they're speaking about extraordinary claims without extraordinary evidence and extraordinary verifiable links that are airtight, then you're wasting your time, okay? You need to follow people that are guiding you with verifiable truth, because in this great war that we are faced with and have been faced with for thousands of years, the problem and the enemy that we are at war with comes not in the form of human beings, because these fuckers hide in the background. It's in the form of ideas, of ignorance, of deception. And the only way you can fight that battle is with verifiable knowledge and verifiable truth, especially if you're trying to, quote unquote, wake other people up. They're not going to listen to you unless you present them with something that is so airtight that they cannot dispute it. With that said, what I'm working on right now is something called MK Ultra 2.0, Beyond the COVID Smoke and Mirrors. And the title is self-evident. I basically trace the history of MK Ultra, of which we know a fraction of a fraction of a fraction, because the most prominent doctors and psychologists, pioneers in their fields, were all involved in MK Ultra. And they facilitated this whole program with so-called nonprofit organizations, including the Rockefeller Foundation. And they also did it with big pharma vax companies such as Pfizer, which is very prominent again in global affairs. Back then they were Park and Davis. So today Park and Davis has been absorbed by Pfizer, but that was the predecessor. In addition, the NIH was involved, the FDA were involved. And the reason why I go through this is because the blueprint is so similar to what's taking place today. And then I start to draw the correspondences, and then I go through how the Gates Foundation, the Wellcome Trust, and the Rockefeller Foundation, a bit further off in the background, which are all prominent actors in today, all of them have got numerous individuals from the intelligence community working within their ranks, most notably DARPA. And DARPA is working on all kinds of crazy mind control technology right now. So that's why I call it MK Ultra 2.0. This is a massive experiment on one level. There's other things going on too, but it's a massive experiment on one level. And then on another level, there is a eugenics aspect, which I'll get into in another blog, because you have to go back over 100 years from now to kind of quantify that. The other thing in closing that I'm working on is actually creating a course. I'm probably going to make it in 2 different courses, because I can be very meticulous in how I present my information. The first one, I don't know in which order I'm going to do them, but the first one is that I want to teach people how they can research, how they can communicate that research, how they can creatively share that research. And I want to teach them how they can also build the confidence to speak up and speak out, because I didn't just start doing this like this. Like I said, I used to be crippled by terrible anxiety. And then I started taking steps to remedy that. And that's needed, because when I do this, maybe it takes me 2 months to conduct a really thorough investigation, but it's not that productive. If I can plant seeds on that level and teach people the tools, and all of this you can do from an internet connection. That's all you need. If you know where to go and you know what to do and you know the tricks, then you're good to go. And then the other one is I want to instruct people on how to protect their minds in this climate of psychological warfare and keep yourself strong mentally, physically, and spiritually. So that, because there's all kinds of tricks that people, they don't see it because they aren't aware of how the game is played. But once you see it, you see the world with totally different eyes. So those are the 2 other things that I'm working on at this time.
Fantastic, man. I wish you the best of luck with that. I mean, I'm willing to even pay you just for a one-on-one on the whole researching and how to bring it out and discuss it and all that stuff. I'd love to be able to do that.
I do one-on-ones. I do one-on-ones, yes.
There you go. It's meant to be. All right.
All right.
I'll be doing that for sure.
Yeah, and I'd be happy, man, because you are somebody that's definitely invested, you know. And the reason why I know that is because you got hit by a bus and you said fuck it, and you got back up, and you got back up on the horse. And that shit's gonna happen in life, boys and girls. I don't care who you are. I don't care how great you think you are. I don't. It doesn't matter. You are going to get hit hard, and unless you know how to deal with that shit, it's going to be a problem. But if you know how to deal with it, then you're good. All right. I don't
Yes.
want to talk like, oh, woe is you. That's not the case.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for that. And just for people that like, I already have your link to your website on the scrolling on the bottom, so people want to check you out in there. But is there any social media? So I know YouTube, and then you're saying
Yeah.
BitChute. What else could people find you on?
I've got very small followings on BitChute, on LBRY, on MeWe, a little bit bigger on Minds.com. Minds.com is a pretty cool platform overall.
Mm-hmm.
There's also, of course, the more conventional ones where I have my biggest following, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Although I never use Twitter. I've got like 8,000 followers on Twitter, and maybe 20 people see my tweets. I mean, really. So yeah, I'm around, man. You know, just look me up, and you shall find me. Seek and ye shall find is the
Yeah.
Truth Warriors mantra.
Awesome. Awesome. That's a great note to end it on. All right, Gavin, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. For anyone that watched live and commented, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Anyone that watches in the future, thank you very much. It means a lot to me. And stay safe, Gavin. I wish you the best of luck with your health issues and all that stuff. Hopefully that can get resolved in a timely manner and get
One
back
day
to
at a time,
100%.
man.
Yeah, one day at a
No
time.
fear. No fear.
And yes. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Have
All
a
right,
great day,
brother.
guys.